Welcome back to Transfer Review, the show where we put silly season under the microscope. Joining myself today is the one and only James Wayne. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a while since I've been on any show, really. Glad to be back, of course. Yeah, good. Can't really complain. Just been chugging away in the background. How are you doing, Mikey?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, James. Not too bad. Was away for a couple of weeks. Back now, feeling refreshed. Very glad to have missed the English heat wave.
Yeah, you did.
I was just kind of doing nothing in 35-degree heat as opposed to working. So I feel very, very privileged with the timing of that. But let's get straight into it today, because there's obviously a lot of rumours circulating over the last week, and we begin with Timo Werner. Now he's been linked with both Juventus and Newcastle this week. James, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, The Guardian have reported that Juventus have made an approach to Chelsea about signing Timo Werner on loan. According to the report, Juventus see Werner as a good option if they fail to land Morata from Atletico Madrid. Obviously, they seem to be the top target. But they aren't the only interested party. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel has said recently that in an interview that his players are unsettled, or some of them are unsettled. Their heads, sorry for the Love Island term here, could be turned. There's a few clubs after them they want to move away, and Timo Werner likely could be one of them. Obviously, a return to RB Leipzig has been rumoured, with Bild's Christian Falk reporting on Tuesday that Newcastle, surprise, surprise, have entered the race for the German forward. Now, it's not obviously surprising to see him linked with a move away. He's made just 15 Premier League starts last season, ranking him 18th in the Chelsea squad behind players like Loftus-Cheek, Chalobah and Ziyech, which is quite surprising, really. He was quite a prominent member of the team the season before, and quite a big signing when he came. Obviously, there was the memes of him missing a lot, high-profile misses, but I did think he performed well when he played, so it's very surprising to see him behind those kind of players. With the World Cup especially coming up, he's keen to play more. Telling the Daily Mail this month, the manager always has different ideas, different thoughts, and what you need in different games. I think in many games I was not in his thoughts. I want to play more, and I should play more to be in good shape for the World Cup. One of the biggest stumbling blocks to this deal, though, are his wages, standing around £275,000 a week. Obviously, we've seen Juventus pay big wages in the past, but they've changed all that now. They're being a lot more serious with their wage structure. But if they are serious about making this a loan deal, he would have to either cut a sizable chunk of his wages, or Chelsea pay a sizable part of his wages to see the move go through. Obviously, Paul Pogba's move to Turin, seen him move from £290,000 a week in England to £160,000, and Lukaku has reportedly taken a €4 million annual pay cut with his loan to Inter Milan. So yeah, it seems like a sensible move in my eyes anyway. Obviously, there's a few things to sort out in terms of wages and financial stuff, but but what is needed at Juventus? Is he needed at Juventus, Mikey?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because Alvaro Morata, like you said, remains Max Allegri's number one target in the striker position. He's performed, I think, pretty well at Juve over the last 2 seasons, registered 33 goals and assists in Serie A in that time. That's a rate of a goal contribution every 131 minutes. That's not, crazy numbers for a striker, but considering he's been playing primarily as a kind of facilitator for the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, for Dusan Vlahovic, I think it's pretty admirable stuff. And especially towards the end of last season, I thought he was one of their key players. But yeah, when you look at his stats, it kind of backs this up. He takes 2.5 shots per 90, which is far from spectacular. I think that actually ranks him in the bottom half of strikers in Europe. But his 0.23 expected assists per 90 ranks him in the top 7%. So he really has become a lot more of a creator at Juventus. When we saw him at Real Madrid and Chelsea, he was very much expected to be the number one goal scorer, and his strike rate, especially at Real Madrid, was ridiculous. But he has very much developed as a player at Juventus, I think. And I think in this sense, I can see why Timo Werner is of interest, because I think that's kind of the role that he was playing a bit in his first season at Chelsea, at least. I think that's, when he's been at his best, playing as an inside forward in a 3-4-3. He was also playing in a front two with Kai Havertz towards the end of last season. but at least recently he's profiled much more as a goal scorer. He actually racked up like 0.53 expected goals per 90 last season. Obviously, that might be helped by the fact he's coming on a bit later in games against hard defences. But if he's putting his chances away, that translates to a really good goal record. Unfortunately, it hasn't had Chelsea, has it? His main problem has been that lack of confidence in front of goal. His goals per shot kind of basically halved from his time at RB Leipzig. So that's always been a sticking point. And also, last season, his creativity dropped off massively. He was actually averaging around kind of Morata's creative numbers in his first season at Chelsea, and I feel like that's where maybe Juve are pinpointing their hopes on him. But yeah, that dropped to 0.03 expected assists per 90 in 21-22. That's basically pretty much non-existent in terms of his creativity. So yeah, I think his performances in that sense really dropped off last term. So I would be concerned a little bit in that sense. But at the same time, I think, if he can, if he's brought into Juve and he can adapt quickly and strike up a good relationship with Vlahovic, obviously Di Maria and, Pogba not so much now because of the injury, but there are other kind of creative outlets there. But I think it would be interesting to see him kind of dovetail with a player like Vlahovic, in a league like Serie A, which has proven a bit of a haven for players who haven't quite cut it in the Premier League of late. The fact he can play off the left as well, I think, is useful because Juve have not had too many options in depth on the left over the last couple of years. So yeah, I think this would be an interesting move. As for Newcastle, we'll wait and see. Obviously, these rumours are kind of circulating a bit, but we're yet to see anything concrete from the Premier League outfit. Is another kind of striker really what they need at this moment in time? I'm not so sure, especially someone who has struggled for goals in the Premier League. But we want to hear from you. What do you make of Timo Werner to Juventus? Is he their best option, or is Alvaro Morata rightly their top target? I've seen them linked with Anthony Martial as well, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, let us know in the comments below, and let's move on to our next story.
Usually in this show we do a transfer we don't like and a transfer we do like. Obviously we do like both of these transfers, but there is quite a sticking point with this one. It's Wesley Fofana to Chelsea. Michael, what's a sticking point?
Yeah, in principle, I think this is a good move on purely on the player, where they're going next in their career and what this club needs. But I can't see it happening for a couple of reasons. But let's get into it. Sky Sports reported on Wednesday that Chelsea are interested in Leicester centre-back Wesley Fofana as they look for alternatives to Barca-bound Jules Koundé, who is pretty much could be made official by this weekend. I think Fabrizio Romano put out his tweet yesterday, so it's all go there. Personal terms agreed, and everything I think pretty much agreed between the clubs too. Obviously the Blues have already signed Kalidou Koulibaly. They made a failed attempt as well to sign Nathan Ake to bring him back from Manchester City as they look to compensate for all the departures of Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen. They could also yet lose Azpilicueta and Marcos Alonso too. Obviously Barcelona are still interested in the Spanish pair, and Thomas Tuchel recently has become a little bit rattled by Barcelona's approach to all of this, and I think it's kind of fair enough. Like what Barcelona are doing in this window is kind of beggars belief in many respects, and for Chelsea it's been particularly annoying because they've landed their targets. They've obviously signed players from them as well, and Thomas Tuchel basically admitted that he was quite annoyed by Barcelona, and also claimed that they don't value Azpilicueta in the same way that he does. Obviously, he's Chelsea captain. Tuchel even kind of came out and said that he considers him basically on a level with Koulibaly. It's all go at Chelsea at the moment, and I think there is a sense that a new centre back needs to be through the door as soon as possible. But Fofana may not be that guy. If they are to pursue him seriously, I think they could be frustrated. The young defender is contracted to Leicester until 2027. We know Leicester do not sell cheap, and reports suggest that they have placed a £70 million price tag on him. Fofana has previously suggested actually that he would be interested in a move to Chelsea, as well as a number of other elite clubs, it must be said, across Europe. It's very easy to kind of put that kind of dream transfer quote out there, but I think the quote that it comes from is him basically saying that he'd like to join Chelsea or Barcelona or Real Madrid in the future, so I don't know whether he's necessarily got his heart specifically set on Chelsea. And furthermore, Chelsea have already spent a lot of money in this window. I think they've got the highest net spend aside from Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken, in the Premier League. They've already spent over 80 million on Koulibaly and Sterling alone, both pretty good value transfers, I think, but whether they'd spend another 70 million on a single player this window, I'm not so sure. Obviously, we need to as well say that Wesley Fofana spent most of last season injured, and obviously he's a young player, so he is a good investment. But whether I don't know, it still seems like a little bit of a gamble at this stage, especially when in a year or two's time he would probably cost a bit cheaper. But James, what would he bring? Because he's clearly a very, very talented centre back, isn't he?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it was obviously upsetting to see him miss, I think it was the whole of last season.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but yeah, in this first season at the Foxes, he justified the hype of his £31.5 million move. He came as a key figure at Leicester's centre-back at just 19 years old, which is kind of unseen in the Premier League. You never see young defenders perform that well. Straight away coming. Everyone says it's tough to come into the Premier League from this league, that league, whatever league. But he came in at 19 years old and dominated. Well, I would say dominated, but was extremely good. He ranked 6th in the squad for minutes. This shows how important he was in 2021. This was ahead of the likes of Ndidi and Maddison, obviously key players within the squad. So if he can sustain that form of 2021, there's no doubt he can play at an elite club. We know he's an extremely solid defender. He made 4.5 tackles and interceptions in that time. He won 3.8 aerial duels, which was the most in the squad. But what really sets him apart is his ability to bring the ball out from the back. He made 6.8 progressive carries per 90, which is remarkable in itself, but even more remarkable for a defender, given the metric excludes carries that start in the defending 40% of the pitch. Obviously, he's much higher up the pitch when he's making these progressive carries. Now, for comparison, William Saliba produced the same number for Marseille last season, while Rudiger completed 5.4, which still ranked him in the top 7% of centre-backs. So it's one of these ones where we've seen this kid, let's say, I don't want to be rude to him, but this kid come into the Premier League, dominate in terms of pretty much every metric you want to see in a defender, especially for an elite club. In this sense, Fofana would be the long-term replacement for Rudiger, and obviously with the experience of Koulibaly and Thiago Silva behind him, he would have lots of license to learn and roam. And I see that as a very, very good working relationship. Obviously, a very young player with massive potential under these two kind of mammoths who both have bags of experience at kind of different leagues. And yeah, for me, it's extremely exciting. But the sticking point is really the price tag. I don't really see Leicester budging, because obviously they're having a difficult window themselves. To lose a player like Fofana, let's say again, because obviously they lost him for a whole season before, would be a detriment. We've been saying that Leicester can kind of get away with this bad business because they've got so many players kind of coming back into the squad, and they've got a good squad. So to lose Fofana would be a massive, massive hit. But should Chelsea really be looking elsewhere, Mikey? Do you think?
Yeah, I think Fofana might be a bridge too far for them. Like you say, Leicester will be really keen not to lose him this summer. Their defence was a real issue without him last year. So if they want to re-establish themselves as a top half club, I think it's essential that they keep him. And he's still got a long contract. They'll still be able to make a profit on him in the future. Yeah, I think Chelsea should probably be looking elsewhere. There are a ton. In seasons past, this hasn't been the case, but there are a ton of really good, promising young centre-backs, and especially left-footed centre-backs as well, across Europe at the moment. You only have to look in kind of Liga and in the Bundesliga to find them. They are plenty, and they're not necessarily players who will necessarily have the same impact as Fofana straight away coming into the Premier League. Like you say, he's a bit of an exception to the rule. but there are nevertheless options out there, and I think, Fofana seems like a bit of a waste of time. They've already wasted their time on a number of targets so far this summer. I think, Todd Boehly would be better off going for a slightly more undervalued signing. But that's all we have time for on Transfer Review for today. James, if they enjoyed this video, where should they go next?
We've been, if you're on Twitter, most of you are, pop down to one of our spaces. It's usually 4 p.m. every day. Definitely pop down on Friday. Huge, I won't spoil it, but there's a huge guest coming in. So if you're a Liverpool fan, let's put some teasers out there. If you're a Liverpool fan, make sure you're there. It's not to be missed. And obviously, stick around. There's something big coming up on the weekend, isn't there, Mikey?
There absolutely is. The Football Pyramid final between myself and Patrick Van Straten. Not to be missed. James Wayne even makes a cheeky appearance as well.
A little
spoiler for you there. So go and check that out. But like James said, get on the Twitter Spaces on Friday. I think it's going to be a discussion. Is it about Liverpool's transfer business?
Majority transfer business.
Yeah, with a pretty famous face in there as well. So make sure you're there for that. Subscribe to Euro Football Daily if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.